What would you say is the number one reason why people fail?
Lack of brains, lack of effort.
Lack of brains, lack of effort.
Yeah, they don't do the work. They don't learn, when you walk in the room, when you start a business and you start to talk about somebody, you're never in a vacuum with no competition, unless you're just extremely lucky. And if there's going to be competition, that means somebody else knows your business as well as you do when you get started. And if you walk into a competitive environment and they still know more about the business than you do and more about your customers, you're going to lose. But most people don't consider that. They don't do the work. They don't learn more about their industry. They don't know even about their business. And so you've got to put in the effort to know more about your industry than anybody else. And that's the brains part, and that's the effort part as well. Because look, if you're competing with me, you better know what you're doing, otherwise I'm gonna kick your ass, and you're not gonna outwork me. And so, the combination is usually what kills businesses early on more than anything.
You could, within a 5-10 minute interview, say, this dude's not gonna make it as an entrepreneur. Could you pretty much know that?
Yeah, I can typically tell, right? I can tell by their passion, I can tell by their focus, I can tell by their preparation. There's a whole realm of things in any business. Here's the business you're in, and here's 1,000 things that influence whether or not you're going to be successful. And really, to me, through my experience in businesses, I can put myself in his position and say, okay, here are 900 of the 1,000 things he has to be aware of, and then go through and ask. And by how many of those or her issues they've been able to address already, that kind of gives me a sense of how hard they're willing to work. And I can tell by the questions they ask me. So all I have to do is say, okay, what do you want to know? And when they start saying, what should I do?
They ask you.
Yeah, and that's fine, right? And I want them to ask questions, but people like to say, the only stupid questions are the ones you don't ask, and that's not right? Because the questions you ask tell whoever more about you than anything else you do. Because in particular, it tells me about your preparation. If you ask me questions about just basic things that you should have known and you should have down to a science, that's going to disqualify you almost more than anything.
Do you think you need college to learn that?
Yeah, I think you do, right? Because it may not, for some people, look, if you're so self-motivated that you can take an online course in accounting and teach yourself everything, you're way ahead of the game anyways, but most people aren't. And I'm not saying you have to go to Indiana, I'm not saying go to an expensive school. I don't care if you go to a community college and take accounting and spend $99 for the class. Just, spending the money forces you to be more obligated to do it. But accounting, finance, lesser extent marketing, sales, if the school offers that, that's the language of business. And so while it's possible to teach yourself these things, and while it's possible to hire them, when you're starting your own company, you don't want to have to spend money hiring an accountant. Right, you're already probably going to have to hire a lawyer to set up well, let me take that. If you've gone through all these classes, you probably don't have to hire a lawyer to incorporate, right? You can probably figure out yourself. And so your cost of opening up a business drops. But even more important than all that, that's the blocking and tackling. That's the language of business. The thing I learned at Indiana that was more important than anything else, I learned how to learn. And learning became far more important to me, because the one certainty in business is that it's always going to be changing. If you're not always learning, to this minute, if I'm not continuously learning, if I'm not just absorbing as much as I can absorb, someone else is going to kick my ass, right? So you talk about paranoia. The greatest source of your paranoia should be knowledge. If someone else knows more than you do, and if you're not learning, if you don't know how to learn, if you don't have a thirst for learning and acquiring information, you're SOL.